excited to wrap up my trip to Australia with you guys this afternoon. Thank you so much for the hospitality.
Thanks, Leigh. Where's my seat?
So look, a couple things I want to talk about.
Yeah,
The first thing that I want to talk about is executing on your ambitions, not justifying them. Something that I've been paying attention to over the last 24 to 48 hours, given the dynamic of this trip, I've been able to engage with a lot of people on social more than normal over the last 48 hours, which has been super enjoyable and very much something I love to do. So much so that I haven't been banned, or not banned, I haven't had to deal with Instagram stopping me from DMing people in the last 2 years, but it hit the limit and it literally kicked me out. So it's been hardcore over the last 2 days, and it allows me to start this talk with something I don't really talk a whole lot about. I think I once quoted it on Instagram, but other than that, I'm fascinated by people's need to justify their ambitions instead of just focusing on them themselves. There's so much insecurity in the system, which is what leads so many people to be fearful to take the jumps that they want to do because they're worried about what other people are going to say about their failures. And I'm fascinated by that because no question my biggest strength was the self-esteem that my mom put inside of me and the environment that I grew up with, the thick skin of being an immigrant and not having much, and all the benefits that I had. But it's really, really fascinating to me of how people spend their energy and their time. So much of it is what I would call defense work, hedging against, justifying, explaining why, reacting to the market instead of reacting to what's going on in their own dome. And so for me, the framework of how I attack the game has so much more to do with the way I feel about my intent and how I'm going about doing it, and all these warm and fuzzy things that I tend to like to talk about. Their strength, humility, empathy, and gratitude, and all these warm, emotional intelligence pillars are enormous strength. Having the ability, one of the things that I've been spending a ton of time on is my dad and I are very different. And the place that we're probably the most different is that he has a visceral reaction to somebody getting one off on him. And I've been watching and I realized, wow, this is a very common trait, just enormous angst and fear for somebody to get you. I, on the other hand, am more in the school of, I don't know if you saw the movie The Bronx Tale, where the kid doesn't pay him back $20 and the mobster's like, you got off easy. I, on the other hand, like when people rip me off. And I'm being serious. I think it speeds up the process of understanding what's happening here. And I never feel like somebody who does the wrong thing ever wins anything. They might have gained something in the short term, but there's absolutely no way that individual organization wins in the long term. And so in general, all this spiel that I'm starting this talk with has to do with mindset. I'm spending a lot of time on mindset. I don't like mindset because it feels fluffy. It feels a little too motivational speaker, and I don't love it. But the truth is, it fucking matters. Because the reason it matters is because it's the way we basically approach everything. One of the biggest reasons I think I've been able to build good companies is I put enormous stress on leaders, managers of mine, to understand that they're not capable, if they are not capable of being the bigger woman and man in every situation, even if they are 100% right, they don't have the framework. Hey, Babs, great to see you. They don't have the framework to be successful as a leader. If you are not capable of taking the loss in the short term for the greater win, you will lose. You'll lose every single time. And so I've been spending a lot of time on this mindset thing, on the structures, on the things that have allowed me to be successful through my career, and then I deploy it against what's happening now. The thing that I want to make sure a lot of you pay attention to. The thing that I trade, the commodity I focus on, the thing I care about the most is attention. The attention of the end consumer is the only thing that matters, because regardless of how cool you are and awesome you are and how great your product out is, regardless of anything, until you have the end consumer's attention and until you storytell to them, you have no shot of succeeding in any way. My entire career, growing to the wine business where I met lovely Babs, who I just met, I was able to build a very big business, and she met me when I was a real young kid, because I was really, really in tune to where the attention was about to go. When everybody in New Jersey, where we did business together, was looking to buy their second store, I thought this internet thing had a chance. And I became a practitioner, a skilled practitioner. I wasn't just the architect. Hey, this is the theory. I became the mason and the plumber, right? And the sheetrocker of email and Google AdWords, and then eventually YouTube and Twitter, and on and on and on. To me, it's interesting that I started with the conversation that I started with, because it's become very clear to me that the reason I'm gaining over the last 2 or 3 years is that too many people here, once they build up a list or some sort of status, think they've graduated into a place where they can start outsourcing or not doing as much. And in reverse, I don't think I've ever worked harder, and I don't think I've ever had more dirt under my fingernails than I did this morning. It's super interesting to me, like, oh right, it's the humility of the game, it's the love of the process that allowed me to get banned from DMing today on Instagram in a world where a lot of you haven't commented to 10 people in your Instagram this year. Because you got 6,000 followers and you think you're fucking fancy. And I'm fascinated about that. I'm fascinated about that. And so, look, I'm going to make this very simple. This could be a 3-minute talk. I'm being really serious. It's very simple. Either you're on team optimism or you're on team pessimism. You're either on the light or the dark. There is no in between. There's no half credit on this issue. You either see what's happening right now and you see the good in all the opportunity, or you see the bad. It's really not complicated. Just as something to ground yourselves with maybe you're not happy about the political climate across the world, maybe you're not happy with terrorism, maybe you're not happy with a lot of other things, but just to settle the score for everybody, this is just big data, not my opinion, it has never been better to be a human being than today. For as shitty as something may be in your personal opinion, on a macro level, this is better. You know, and it's really fascinating to me that we can allow ourselves through reading headlines or a couple of news articles or our Facebook stream to decide it's bad without context to the rest of time, right? It might be bad in your point of view, but it's better than the Black Plague, right? You may not like some of the leaders in the world, but remember Hitler? Like I think we have a gross, stunning ability to take things for granted. And this country has had so much prosperity over 3 generations, you're just fucking soft. And we have to have a real realization with ourselves that we're soft. We have to. It's really easy to complain that your top of the funnel isn't converting as well when you're not going to war and getting shot in the fucking face. And so for me, we lack collective gratitude, and we are just not putting things into perspective. Yeah, I get that you might have not gotten as many likes as you wanted, but the reality is you have to put that into context. I understand that you may not like that technology moving so fast, and there's so many things to know and do, yet you don't have the ability to take a step back and realize that you have the audacity. How many people here are an entrepreneur? Raise your hands. Hi.
She's good.
You have the audacity to want to live your life on your rules and pay for your lifestyle so you can do anything you want at any time. And you don't think that comes with a disproportionate amount of work? There's this huge disconnect right now with entrepreneurship. Let me tell you what entrepreneurship is. It's lonely. It's stressful. It's, difficult. It sounds great on paper until you realize when you have employees, you work for them, not they work for you, right? You're on the record. Super fun to have a boss. You know why? At the end of the day, at some point, you can say it's their fault. You're not tricking anybody that it's not your fault if your business isn't successful when it's your business. And so we're sitting in a really interesting time where entrepreneurship was put on a huge pedestal. When I met Babs, I was a DNF student, and I was just another kid going into his dad's liquor store, and woe is me, like I wasn't a good student. And I grew up in the era where your grades at the college you went to was the 100% black and white KPI of who you are. There was no debate. If you were a good, like in the 80s and 90s, if you went to a good school, you were good, and if you didn't, you were bad. There was no entrepreneur talk. There was none of this stuff going on. For me, I was incapable of doing anything else. I punted school in 4th fucking grade. I sat in that class and I said, fuck Saturn. I kind of knew who I was. You know, you get a little bit of confidence when you're in 6th grade and making $1,000 a weekend selling baseball cards. I really found my calling. I understood myself, but most of all, I was willing to eat shit. My ability to eat shit is very high. I do it now. I am willing to eat shit, and I'm stunned by people's inability to do so. I'm shocked by people not understanding the trade that we're trying to make here, which is if you want it great, it's gotta hurt. Before you sip the champagne, you gotta eat a shit ton of dirt, right? Sometimes with rocks in it, and you chip your teeth. Right? And so, I don't know, I think the game is soft. I'm looking forward to the macroeconomic climate to collapse so that all entrepreneurs can go and get jobs, right? But what I'm most focused on are the people here who don't want that to happen or can't imagine it regardless of anything and not letting it happen. And so here are the things that I want to talk about. If you do not spend a disproportionate amount of your time over the next 24 months massively figuring out Facebook and Instagram, you will leave an enormous amount of money on the table. You may leave enough money on the table that doesn't allow you to continue your business if the macroeconomic climate changes. I want to remind everybody that the last 9 years have been very good in the economy. How many people here 30 or under? Raise your hands. Actually, if you're 30 and under, can you stand up real quick? I want people to see this visual. Don't get lazy on me, stand up. That's what I'm doing. Fuck, this sucks. Let's clap it up for the youngsters. So I'm a super pro millennial. I hate this millennial talk like millennials are. Everybody over 40 here, and knew a ton of people that were lazy and entitled back in the day. It's all the same shit. It's just old people just being bitter and suppressing the next generation. But here's the one thing that is fact. If you're 30 and under, the big disadvantage you have is not experience, it's that you haven't been punched in the fucking mouth yet. You know, until you have, 9/11, until you have the 2000 stock market collapse, until you go through Bear Stearns in 2007 and 8, you just don't know. It's not your fault, you're not bad. You just don't know what happens when nobody wants to pay you money for an Instagram post. You don't know what it feels like when raising capital for your idea is completely laughable because there's no money in the system. And so, for the people 30 and under, my biggest thing is that I want you to build leverage and practicality. Too many people are just building businesses that have no sustainable long-term vision. You gotta take a step back and control your expenses. I'm just fascinated by people's wild spending habits, really not just under 30, this whole collective, people feeling this need to buy things with the profits from the business instead of saving or reinvesting in the business. And that's where you get caught in these 9-year windows where it feels good, you don't know any difference. For under 30, you just never knew any difference. And for the rest of us, you kind of forget when it's a decade of prosperity. You kind of forget those moments. You also might have not been an entrepreneur in 2008. You might have worked somewhere, and so you didn't know what it felt like. You don't know how that feels where, it's a really funny thing when you have outstanding invoices and people aren't going to pay. And so I think the biggest thing that I want to make sure is that we take advantage. So, when I hear the story of my narrative of building a $4 to $60 million business, it's super great, but I always see it as a huge disappointment. Even though I built one of the largest blind stores in the country, I left a lot of money on the table because I still was doing direct mail and newspaper ads and radio ads and billboards on the highway, and what I should have been doing from 2002 to 2005 is putting all the money into Google AdWords, not a lot like I was doing. I see that as a great 30 to 50 maybe a $100 million miss on my part because I had the best hand. It was called Google AdWords in the early 2000s. I just didn't squeeze it hard enough. And so as I sit here today, and I see the same exact moment, and there's a big reason that I'm producing more content than ever, traveling more than ever, it's because we're in that same moment. It's just pattern recognition. I've seen this fucking show before. Right now, every person here has not become unbelievably educated in how to run Facebook ads, not hire somebody to do it. You become disproportionately educated in how to run Facebook ads, test creative, test segmentation, pay Instagram influencers to give you shout outs on your service, product, what have you. For the people in here who do not squeeze it during this era, they will regret it tremendously. Because what's going to happen over the next 5 years is the biggest brands in the world are going to finally spend enough money on Facebook, the proper amount they should be spending. And when BMW and Coca-Cola and Toyota spend tens of millions of dollars in Facebook that they're not right now, the prices on the auction marketplace that you buy ads on will go up. Very simple, supply and demand. I used to pay 5 cents a click for Camus and Pinot Noir and Chardonnay. Those words aren't 5 fucking cents anymore. You can reach a 40-year-old woman into fitness in Brisbane right now for $4 CPMs, but when it's $94 CPMs in 5 years, and people don't click ads in Facebook anymore, you'll be really sad that you fucking sat on your hands during this era. There are moments in our history when we transitioned from the radio to the television, when the internet first emerged, when cable television first emerged, where we have grossly underpriced attention, where the consumer's actually spending their time, but the market hasn't adjusted to the reality of our attention. We are living deeply in it right this second, and too many of you are gagging, and just doing enough to get by to make yourself feel good that you're doing it. The amount of people here who have opinions on Facebook ads and Snapchat ads and Instagram ads, but have never run them, is laughable. The amount of people here who spent $1,000 on a Facebook ad campaign that didn't work and they deemed the entire thing to not work is laughable. My friends, the ROI of basketball is 0 to me. It's $1 billion for LeBron. Just because you haven't figured it out yet, or it's not working to the extreme, doesn't mean it's not actually happening. I sit here today and tell you about this, not because I give any shits if you actually do anything about it. I mean, that's serious. I'm just saying this to be historically correct. I'm putting this on the record. So I watch this in 9 years and be like, yep, smart back then too. I'm desperate for you to do something about it because I want your email in 3 years and say my yoga studio went from 400,000 to 4.3 million because of the talk that you gave me. That would be phenomenal. I want it bad. I want it real bad, but I can't control it. I can't force you. So I'm hopeful. And so I really hope that you guys understand that we are living through a massive attention arbitrage. That the cell phone that you have in your hands right now is more powerful than most countries' computer systems 30 years ago. That the cost to produce content in video or audio form and then distribute it used to cost millions of dollars. You literally had to have hundreds of thousands of dollars in equipment, hundreds of thousands of dollars in salary employees, and then millions and millions and millions of dollars in infrastructure distribution costs, shooting fucking satellites into outer space, buying huge buildings and printing presses to get the ability to get in front of people in society. Now, your dipshit fucking phone, and Facebook, Instagram, Snapchat, all these let me remind you, I know everybody complains when Facebook changes its algorithm. Let me just remind you, organically, you can post all this stuff and pay nothing for distribution. Is it great as